Welcome to C3 in this together, 30 minutes in our own voice mental health series. In honor of May being Mental Health Awareness Month, we're going to be hearing from someone or a family member who is living, managing, coping, and navigating with mental health. My hope through this series is that we would become the generation that would end the silence, the shame, and the stigma of mental health. Today, I am so honored to have with us our special guest, Brittany Barrett. Brittany is a treasured friend, a mental health advocate, and in our own voice presenter with National Alliance of Mental Illness. And I'll say it again. So Brittany is our special guest, of course. She's my friend, but she is a mental health advocate and an in our own voice presenter with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, Georgia. NAMI is the nation's largest grassroots organization for mental health awareness. So we are so honored today to have with us again, Brittany. So Brittany, welcome to our series. We're so glad you're with us. Thank you for joining us, and we're going to jump right in. Tell us as much as you want to tell us about yourself, or a little bit more than what I said, and then we will go into tell us your story.
All right. Well, hi, guys. I'm happy to be here. Happy to talk about mental health awareness. The first thing I'd like to say is that we all have mental health. Just as we all have physical health, we all have mental health. It starts up here and works its way down. Some of us, however, have mental illness within that mental health. And that's where, we usually see that dividing line. So for me, my name is Brittany Barrett. I just turned 31. And I have been dealing with mental health for about 25 years. So since I was about 6 years old. Mental health started for me in the case of my mom, though. So when I was in kindergarten, my parents divorced, and that's usually, very traumatic for a child. But for me, it was not a traumatic event. It was really a welcome change. And I realized I was going to get 2 Christmases. And at 6 years old, you can't imagine anything better than double the Christmas presents. So soon after my dad left the household, I started to notice behaviors in my mom that I hadn't noticed before. And those were that she could sleep for days at a time. She was sometimes rageful. That rage would sometimes turn into abuse to my sister and myself. And then sometimes she was just despondent, and, there was nothing that we could really do to help her. There seemed to be no cause to it. And within about a year of their divorce, custody was granted to my dad. So my dad became a single parent to a young daughter. My sister is 13 years older than me, so she was already of age. Getting custody of me meant that my mom would get joint custody. But joint custody with my mom was really visiting her in mental health facilities, sometimes visiting her in jail. And there was always, the same sort of pattern in these visitations. In these visitations, we would show up to a facility and we would have to be, beeped in through a special code. We would get a speech where, you can't bring anything in, you can't take anything out, and you only have an hour. And something I noticed at a young age in these visits were that everyone in these facilities all had on the same blue fuzzy socks. I noticed that nobody had on shoes. And, it's one of those things that I look back and I wonder why it struck such a chord with me. But I just thought, do you get those socks here? Did everyone come with those socks? Sometimes we would go to visit my mom and she'd be so upset and she'd beg us to please, take her out of there. And of course we couldn't. And then sometimes she'd be so angry she was there, she would, refuse to see us, even though we hadn't had anything to do with her hospitalization. And then sometimes she was so overly medicated that she would just have no idea we had even been there to see her. And truthfully, that's the pattern that went on for about 7 years. Her stays in mental health facilities got longer. Her visitations with me outside of these facilities were a lot shorter. And when, I did see her outside of these facilities, typically I was taking care of myself and taking care of her. So by the time I had turned 14, my dad and I had moved across the state. My dad had remarried, and we received a phone call one Sunday right after I'd started my 9th grade year of high school. And that Sunday call said that Wanda has attempted suicide, And to be frank, it wasn't necessarily a surprise phone call. It wasn't my mom's first suicide attempt. It wasn't even her fifth attempt, but it was the attempt that took her life. So at 14 years old, I had lost my mom after, living my whole life so far with a very strange understanding of who my mom had been. I lived in the shame of she wasn't like anybody else's mom, and that I couldn't really talk about her and my experiences. And now she had passed away, and I thought, I would never be able to reconcile that. But my parents, understanding the trauma I had gone through, decided to take me to see a therapist. And I was very reluctant to that originally. I thought, I've lived my whole life so far handling my own problems. Why did I want to go talk to a stranger now about my problems? And this therapist and I, for about 8 or 9 months, she kind of dug out of me certain things. She ran tests. She talked to my parents. And after, like I said, about 8 or 9 months, she said she wanted to talk to the 4 of us all together, which was something she hadn't done before. And when she brought my parents in, she said, I think I've come to a diagnosis for Brittany. And that really was shocking to me because I hadn't considered that we were there for any sort of diagnoses or anything like that. And she said, I think we could say Brittany has post-traumatic stress disorder. And I thought, only soldiers get that. So that didn't make sense to me. And then she said, or Brittany could have generalized anxiety. And I thought, well, that might be true. Because from a very, young age, I had functioned at a very high anxiety level. And then she said, but really what I think we're looking at is an early onset case of bipolar disorder. And I didn't understand bipolar disorder, but I knew it was a mental illness. And what I knew of mental illness to that point was that you died from it. So at 14, I thought my life is over. I'm not going to accomplish anything. I'm not going to go anywhere in life. This is just the end. So, my parents thankfully immediately jumped into how can we help? What can we do? Where do we go from here? And, the therapist said she needs ongoing treatment. She needs to see a psychiatrist. And I was so staunchly against ever speaking to this woman again. And I just refused to ever see her. But my parents did take me to see a psychiatrist. And that psychiatrist gave me a low-dose antidepressant. And, at 14 years old and having seen my mom take so many medications, I didn't want that either. And so, my parents would ask me before school if I had taken my medication. And I would tell them yes, because I had taken it out of the bottle and into the trash can. I really only took it maybe 3 out of 7 days a week. So never enough for it really to help manage my symptoms. And by that time, 14, 15, 16, I had started to rapid cycle. And rapid cycling means that I go from extreme highs of mania to just deep, desperate lows of depression and suicidal ideations. All the long while, I wasn't telling the people around me what was going on. I would downplay my symptoms. And truthfully, everyone in my household had to kind of hold their breath all the time because they never knew what I was going to be feeling from one moment to another, and neither did I. So by the time the end of my 10th grade year was drawing near, I had had a particularly bad day at school. And I had come home and I said, wow, I haven't slept in probably 4 days. And, that was normal for me to not have slept for 4 days. And I thought I'm going to take a nap and I'll get up for dinner and I'll feel better. And I didn't get up for 2 weeks. And so, my parents are talking to the Board of Education and the Board of Education is talking to the school. And the school decided to put me on a homeward bound education program where for the remainder of my 10th grade year, I had to be homeschooled. Typically when you think of situations like that, you think of maybe terminally ill students. But for me, I was completely unable to function mentally and physically. I couldn't be forced to do anything because they could barely get me out of bed. So I finished 10th grade, and that summer I got my driver's license, and it was just not an exciting time for me. I wasn't eager to go see my friends or do anything like that. So 11th grade came around and my parents encouraged me to go to school, and I went back and I finished 11th and 12th grade, and my grades suffered tremendously. I had always been a high achieving student, and now, I had just barely graduated. I still had this idea that there wasn't anything I was going to be able to do with my life. So it didn't matter what my grades were because I didn't feel like I should even go to college, and I didn't have ideas for a career. And, I had a little part-time job, and I did sign up for some community college classes, just Common Core classes. And I came home from that part-time job. I had just turned 19. And one day I said, wow, I haven't slept in several days. I'm exhausted from this job. I'm going to take a nap. And this time it was for 31 days. And yeah, in those 31 days, I lost about 30 pounds because I wasn't eating anymore. I was really unable to do any sort of self-care like showering or, maintaining any hygiene. Lost the job because, everyone knows you can't just not go to work for a month. And I had my fears confirmed that, I was a college dropout at that point. I couldn't go to school again. And so that was that. And, while I was suffering through those 31 days, I realized that I wanted to not be here anymore. I wanted to die. I wanted to go the way of my mom. And I had these, thoughts of different ways that I could harm myself, different ways that wasn't going to work. And, in a moment of psychosis, I called my stepmom at work and I asked her very frankly, how do you think I could kill myself? And, that of course doesn't make any sense in, the state of mind you and I are in now. But to me in that moment, it made perfect sense. And my stepmom rushed home. Of course, she didn't give me the answer I wanted. And, my parents said, you have to get in the car. We're going to the hospital. And we did. And I was furious because I thought, why are you taking me to a hospital when I'm looking for a way to, no longer be here? So we went to the hospital and I walked in those very familiar double doors. And I noticed that there was a gentleman walking across the hallway, and on his feet were those blue fuzzy socks. And I had almost a moment of shell shock because I was just flooded with memories of years and years of seeing my mom wear those socks. And I thought, these socks are worse than death to me because these socks mean that all these things I've avoided are here and they're happening, and I'm out of my mind, and I'm, I don't deserve to be happy. It meant so much just awfulness to me. And, I begged and I pleaded to not be committed. And after I was examined by the doctor and a nurse, they said that because I was over 18 and had not harmed myself, they could not admit me without my permission, but that they could offer me outpatient care. And I wasn't sure what that even was, but it meant I didn't have to wear those socks that day. So I signed up for it. And in 30 days, I had a doctor, he said to me that first day, he said, why won't you take this medication? And I said, I didn't ask for it. I don't want it. I don't want to be just like my mom. I don't want people to know I take it. And he said, okay, what would you do if you had diabetes? I guess I would take insulin. And he said, and what about cancer? And I said, well, I guess I would probably get, chemotherapy. And he said, this isn't any different. He said, you have neurotransmitters in your brain, and they're trying to produce dopamine and serotonin, but through no fault of your own, they're not able to. You need to make up the difference somewhere. And this medication is able to do that. And although I was still resistant, I said, okay, I'll give it a try. And, in the back of my mind, I thought, when it doesn't work, I'll be able to laugh in your face. But the truth is, it did start to work. And I did start to have symptom relief, Then for the first time, I sat in rooms of, strangers and had to openly talk about my experiences and about my diagnoses and about my mom. And, I was able to do personal therapy during that time and, was more than comfortable at that point to do it. Really, that outpatient care that month allowed me to take control of my mental health. It allowed me to know that I could go from mental illness to mental wellness. And, I'd never seen that example set before. I thought mentally ill was just ill, and that was it. But I realized that I could be mentally ill, but also mentally well.
Yes.
I left that treatment and I found my own doctors and I found medication that works for me. And, I've changed therapies, I've changed medications. I actually also found the group Al-Anon. And for people that don't know, Al-Anon is really the sister program to Alcoholics Anonymous. And Alcoholics Anonymous, serves alcoholics and addicts, and Al-Anon serves the friends and family members of alcoholics and addicts. Wow. And the reason that group was so important to me is through my mom's mental illness, she had developed a prescription drug habit. And, addiction and mental illness often, are comorbidities that go hand in hand. And I realized that I could get help for that aspect of what I had been through as well. And, I've done a lot of wonderful things in 12 years that I didn't think were possible. I'm about to graduate with a bachelor's degree in mental health. I have an associate's. I was able to get married to, a man that's my biggest supporter. And I've had a lot of success. And through the success, it'd be unrealistic if I didn't tell you about the other side to it, though. I have been hospitalized. And I did have to wear those socks. And the moment that I had to hand my shoes over and trade them for those socks felt like just the end of the world. But once they were on my feet, I realized that they were just another step. They were just another tool that I would have to move forward. And I've had to wear them a few times. And, Lord only knows if I'll need to wear them again. I've done other outpatient programs, and, at the time, it truly saved my life. It helped get me back on track about 4 years ago. And if I have to do, 10 more day programs, I'll do it because it's important. And, I joined NAMI as an advocate because when I was growing up, I felt such shame about having a mentally ill mom. And then I felt such shame about being mentally ill myself. And I wanted to hear from people who were mentally ill but successful. I wanted to be that example. And so now I tried to be that example to the people who were looking for it, to the young children, to the teachers, to the police officers, the first responders. I've been lucky enough to speak to thousands of individuals at this point across the state, college freshmen. I want them to know that you can be mentally ill and mentally well. And that, the shame that we carry is a choice, and that we don't have to. That's a weight that we don't have to carry. And so, I've met Morais through that, and, he's become a trusted friend, and any opportunity I can to be involved with him, I, always look forward to. So, I'm really happy to be here today, like I said, and I definitely thank you for the opportunity to share my story.
Wow. Thank you so much, Brittany, for sharing your story. You've heard me say this before, that your story is bringing hope, light, meaning to so many lives. And you've also heard me say this, and I'll say it here on this public forum. Thank you for staying. And I'll say it again. Thank you for staying. Because you stayed, you've been such an amazing hope to so many people, including myself. So thank you again for your story. And I know many are going to be watching. Yes, so many are going to be watching, and it's going to be an inspiration to them and the family members that they care for. Tell us this, Brittany. You've shared your story. What would you say to someone or a loved one who's managing mental illness?
A few things, probably. First, definitely become an active participant in your healthcare. There's a misconception with a lot of people that, doctors are there to treat you and you're there to follow their treatment. The truth is, doctors are there to work with you to follow the right treatment for you. Wow. So if you don't feel like the doctor is working with you, find another doctor. It's not always easy, but become an active participant. You don't have to sit by and just be handed medication, handed therapy. You can become an active participant and be in the driver's seat of your own wellness. I think that going from being passive in my own treatment to active is really what has made the difference over the last 12 years. If I had made that decision, I wouldn't have made it this far. I had that same conception that I need to find a doctor that'll hand me meds and tell me what to do and everything will be great. But that's not true. You can be in the driver's seat of your own healthcare. And I would definitely encourage people for that. And I would say, share your own story, because what I found is the more I talk about what I've been through, the less shame, the less guilt I've felt. And in turn, I've been able to help other people. Telling my story today and anytime I get the opportunity is so cathartic. I mean, it makes me feel lighter. It makes me feel more hopeful. And, in turn, I hope it helps other people that same way.
Wow, thank you so much for that. I love that. Share your story, whatever your story is.
Right.
And I often say this, if you want healing, you yourself must become a healer, right? If you're looking
Yes.
for a miracle, you yourself must become that miracle maker. Here's our final question for our segment today, Brittany. What do you want people to know about taking care of our mental health? What would you say to people?
As I said at the beginning, everyone has mental health. We don't all grow up in families where mental health is, highlighted. For some of us, it's kind of forced on us. But, everyone still has mental health regardless. And just like with any physical ailment, if you need treatment for something and you ignore it, that problem only gets worse. It doesn't go away. It festers, it grows, it becomes heavier. So with mental health, you have to do things that treat your mental health and soothe your soul and, make you feel as well as you can be. Because truthfully, if your mental health is not being taken care of, your whole body suffers. You physical manifestations of that, your relationships suffer, your job can suffer. So taking care of your mental health is not something that should be optional. It should be something that you make a priority in whatever way that is for you. If it's seeing a doctor, if it's, being in nature, everyone with their mental health doesn't have to be treated with a prescription. They can be treated in a number of ways. I think that's a misconception a lot of people have. Not everyone has to be on medication, but everyone should treat their mental health as the absolute precious thing that it is.
Thank you so much. Well, you heard it here, my friends. We trust that our series, C3 in this together, 30 minutes in our own voice, that is bringing hope and meaning to you. More importantly, we are wanting to, again, end the silence, the shame, and the stigma of mental health. My friends, thank you so much for joining us. You've heard me say this, and I'll say it here again. If you have a brain, which all of us do, right? If you have a brain, if you have feelings, if you have mood, then you deal with mental health. So all of us are managing our mental health in one form, one shape, or another. So we look forward to you joining us the next time in our series, where we will hear from others who are managing, others like our friend Brittany, who are managing, coping, and navigating mental health and mental illness. We also want to remind you, for more resources about mental health from organizations like NAMI, we invite you to visit our webpage, which is c3inthistogether.com. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time. My friend Brittany, thank you again as always. You are such an inspiration to me. I quote you all the time in all of my trainings, my presentations, in therapy. I mean, your name rings out all the time. So I had to get you in here so they could see one of my mental health heroes. All right, take care, my friends, and we will see you next time.